Hello and welcome to this Marathi tutorial in which I'll describe how to answer question 2. What are your nature and people targets and other primary interests? Before we get started, make sure to set the video to HD for best playback quality, and also check out the other videos in this playlist that will help you answer each of these questions. You'll find the links to the playlist in the video description below. I've returned to viewing the marine example project in Marathi desktop. I'm now in the diagram view, and I'm on the Conceptual Model tab, where you can build situation analysis diagrams. As with all views in Marathi, you can learn more about this step using the wizard at the top of the page and clicking through the Next and Previous buttons. One of the early steps in your project planning is identifying a small set of targets, either conservation targets or human well-being targets. Conservation targets represent and encompass the full suite of biodiversity in the project. Human well-being targets focus on those components of human well-being affected by the status of conservation targets. When you want to hide the step-by-step wizard, you can either grab the splitter in the middle and drag it all the way to the top. Alternatively, you can click on these little triangles to open and close the wizard. You can add nature or conservation targets to your diagram by clicking on the green Insert Target button. I want to enter the target name of seabirds, so I'll type seabirds into the name field, and I can close the dialog box either by clicking closed or the X in the top right corner. For the Marathi Basics video, I'll focus on this seabirds target, but the marine example project has a set of 5 conservation targets. You can also specify the conservation scope as a factor in the diagram by clicking on Insert Scope box. I'll resize the scope box by dragging the corner to encompass the conservation targets. And I'll give it this particular scope the name Conservation Scope, Marine Resources, and provide the description in the Details field, and click on Close. For people or human well-being targets, you'd click on the Insert Human Well-being Target button. In this case, I already have some entered in a different diagram, so I'll click on that one now. Here you can see 2 human well-being targets, home security and human health, with a corresponding social scope box. As is covered in the Open Standards guidance material, you can describe the connections between nature targets and human well-being targets, as I'm showing here, using contributing factors as a way of describing the relationships. I'll cover contributing factors in the next video. I've returned to our other conceptual model diagram, where I want to show you how you can describe the status of your targets. To add status information, double-click on the target factor, then click on the Viability tab. Marathi supports 2 modes for describing target status, key attribute and simple. We're in the key attribute mode right now. The population size of ruby-crested puffins has been identified as a key attribute of the seabird's target. An indicator has been added representing the number of breeding pairs, and poor, fair, good, and very good categories have been defined based upon expert knowledge, and this information could have come from other sources as well. You can see an indicator measurement value of 1,200 breeding pairs from 2009, and this fell into the very good stat. However, the most recent indicator measurement from 2017 indicates only 210 breeding pairs, which falls into the poor category, giving it the overall status right now of poor. You can see that the intended future status by the year 2020 is to get it back to 750 breeding pairs. So that's the key attribute mode. The simple mode allows users to specify an overall target viability status without key ecological attributes. I'll switch back to key. And go ahead and close the target factor. You can see that target viability status is displayed in the left-hand edge of each of the target factors. The full wording of the basics question featured in this video is what are your nature and people targets and other primary interests. The targets serve as the main focal point for conservation projects, but sometimes additional primary interests are identified through stakeholder analyses. These additional primary interests drive the behavior and decisions of key stakeholders. As you'll see in the next video that addresses the question, what problems are you trying to solve, ecotourism visits to the island with the seabird colony is identified as part of the situation analysis that's driving some of the threats to seabirds. If ecotourism is a key driver of the local economy, addressing solutions with this additional primary interest in mind might be important for the strategy selection process that occurs later in the planning process. In the next video, you'll see important causal connections between ecotourism and the conservation target of seabirds. That concludes video 2 that addresses the question, what are your nature and people targets and other primary interests? Nature and people targets serve as a principal focus of attention in the design of any conservation project. RADI allows you to represent your targets in both conceptual models and results chain diagrams, and gives you a couple of options for assessing the current status and intended future status of your targets. In the next video, we'll look at identifying problems or threats to your targets and probe the underlying drivers using the conceptual model tool.